Property deal sourcing can be a great business that enables you to build a fantastic income and also cherry pick the best deals for yourself. In this video, I want to break down the 6 key steps in creating a compliant deal sourcing business. If you're watching my videos for the first time, my name is Saj Hussain, and on this channel I share with you my 15 years of property investing experience to ultimately help you get further faster in your own property investing journey. When it comes to deal sourcing, it's a really popular strategy, and the reason is because the fees can be great. So you sell a deal, you make £3,000, £4,000, £5,000, really good income. You don't need a huge amount of money to start, a little bit maybe on marketing and getting set up, and you don't need huge chunks of cash because you're not actually buying any property. You're packaging those deals up and you're offering them to somebody else. Sounds great, right? You know, with me on this channel, if you've been watching for any period of time, you get the real truth rather than all the dreamy, dressed up version, the fluffy version. When it comes to deal sourcing, it is hard work. There is no doubt about that. You've got a lot of people to deal with, you've got sellers to deal with, you've got buyers to deal with, you've got brokers, you've got solicitors, agents. There's a lot of people and personalities you need to manage for each and every transaction. Then of course, you've got some deals that are just going to fall out of bed. They're not going to complete. You'll have done all the work and all the graft, and then there's nothing to show for it at the end because you're not going to get paid your fee unless that deal completes. Now, the thing is, it is hard work, but the rewards are high. I remember when I first started about 15 years ago, very early in my property investing journey, and I was learning all these different strategies about property. One of the key things that I learned quite early was you've got to get really good at finding deals. So I was out there doing marketing activity, generating leads, speaking to sellers, speaking to agents. So I was having all these conversations with either brokers or the owners of the properties themselves with a view to actually sell those deals on somebody else. Then I'd go along to a networking meeting, I'd be speaking to potential investors there or buyers of those deals and asking about what they're looking for, what they want, and really try and package those two things up and get it to work. Now, I've got to be completely honest with you here. My first 2 years, I really struggled and I sucked at this in terms of trying to get it to work because I was doing too many different things and really not doing any of them very well. The real success came when I started focusing on the one thing, and that was finding good quality deals. That is the key in being able to get this to work. Sometimes people talk about, oh, when I get these deals, how am I going to sell it? Who's going to buy it? Who's going to buy these deals off me? I can tell you this, if you get very good at finding deals, you don't need to worry so much about who you're going to sell them to because those people will come and find you. One of the mistakes I made when I first started doing this is I'd go and meet potential investors, talk to them, understand what it is they're looking for, and literally go shopping for them to try and find a property for them. So they describe to me, look, I'm looking for this type of property in this location, needs to be this number of bedrooms, this sort of layout, and I'm thinking, perfect, I'll go and find one of those for you. So I'd go looking, and this could be quite difficult when you're trying to find something like that when you're shopping to order. But I'd find something and I'd go back to them and I think, yes, all the hard work is paid off. I found them exactly the kind of property they're looking for. I'd say, hey, Mr. Investor, I've got that perfect deal for you that you're looking for. Here it is, it fits the bill perfectly for you. They'd look at it and say, I'm not sure I quite like the design of these windows. And I'm thinking, what? Doesn't make no sense. This was the property that you were looking for. And really, when you're trying to shop to order, it can be so difficult because you're never really going to fully understand exactly what somebody wants. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but you're making life so much more difficult. What I did, I started knuckling down and just finding really good deals. Rather than trying to shop specifically for what people want, I started looking for family houses that were 2 or 3 bedrooms that I could get at a discount between 20 to 30% of what was generally the market value. In and around the West Midlands, that was really my goal, my objective. When I started finding those deals and I started negotiating those deals, it was so much easier to sell them because I was focusing and specializing on something quite specific. Over the last 15 years of sourcing property, one of the other things I've learned is you've got to absolutely be good at finding deals and finding the investors. These are the 2 key things that are the recipe for property success: ability to find good deals and ability to find good money, so you can bring those 2 things together, or you can cherry pick them to be able to work for your deals. And the thing that I would do, a mistake that I made, I'd go through these phases where I'd really knuckle down, I'd do my marketing hard and I'd go and find these deals, I'd negotiate the deals, and I think I've got some really fantastic deals. And you know, these things you don't just fall over every day. You've got to put the effort in, negotiate them, and you go through a process. It could take several weeks. Sometimes these things might take months to try and find and get them structured and get them ready to be able to turn them into a great deal. And then I'll turn around and I think, right, I've now got to sell these deals to somebody, and actually I haven't really spent any time nurturing any relationships with investors that were going to buy those deals. And then it may have been somebody I spoke to 3 months ago and said, yeah, I'm looking for something. And when I ring them up, they said, oh no, I bought something 2 months ago. And I'm thinking, oh man, I was relying on that person to buy this deal. That's because I'm not keeping that relationship going with the investor. I've just been focusing on the one thing. And then there'd be phases I'd go through where I'd be really concentrating on building relationship with investors to either raise money for projects that I was doing or understanding what they're looking for to be able to find them the right properties. But the reality is, if I spend all my time doing that and then I turn around and don't have any deals, it still doesn't work. So the key here really is you really need to spin both plates at the same time. That's finding the deals and finding the investors who've got the money that are going to be able to acquire those deals. You might be thinking right now, I'm out there looking for these deals. That means if I come across something I don't really want and it's a good deal, I can just advertise it and sell it. Stick it on Facebook. Is that right? Well, that's not quite correct, because you need to ensure that you're compliant when you're operating this business. And so what sort of compliance are we talking about? Well, let me describe an estate agent to you first of all. What is it that an estate agent does? An estate agent essentially gets paid by the seller of a property to market their property, find them a buyer, and be able to complete that transaction, oversee the purchase process effectively. So what's happening there is an individual is paying the agent to sell their property for them. But when you think of deal sourcing, it's actually not that dissimilar. But the only real difference is you're being paid as a deal sourcer by the person buying the property versus the person selling it, which is what happens with an estate agency. So that's really the core difference, but ultimately it's the same type of business that you operate. It's a brokering business where you're bringing properties and buyers together. So it's the buyer that's paying the agent's fee as opposed to the seller. So when you think about it in that context, this is why we need to be compliant with however an estate agency works, in the sense that when we're deal sourcing, really what we're doing, we're operating a business that's very similar to an estate agency, and we need to comply with all the things normally an estate agency would have to comply with. Estate agency work is governed by the Estate Agency Act of 1979, and over the years there's been various other bits of regulation and governance that we also need to comply with in order to be able to run a business like this. So let's now jump into the 6 key steps that you need to follow in order to set up a compliant deal sourcing and packaging business. Step number 1 is setting up your business structure. So what structure can you have? You may operate as a sole trader, it might be a partnership, or may even be a limited company. Now, if I was going to start again now, I would set this up as a limited company, but ultimately this is a question around tax, which is going to be the most efficient way for you. So maybe a conversation to have with your tax advisor or your accountant if you're going to start doing this. The key thing is just to understand which is going to be the right way for you. There isn't necessarily a right way or wrong way that's going to suit everybody. But as I said, if I was going to start again, I'd start with a limited company. Now you can get a limited company that you set up yourself. You can just go and purchase it maybe for 10 quid, or you can get maybe an accountant to do it. But you know, if you've got about 100 quid you've allocated, you can probably use one of these halfway houses that do most of the work for you. So you get a template type company. But of course, as I said, it's probably best to speak to your tax accountant or your advisor. Talking at tax, you also need to be aware that when your turnover, that's the income that you're generating, your fees, when you're hitting £85,000, you'd also need to register for VAT and charge 20% VAT on your fees as well. If you're finding this content useful and you're enjoying it, then do me a favor, smash that like button and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This really helps me, it gives me a gauge that people are enjoying this content, they find it useful, and of course YouTube shows it to more people, which means I can help and serve more people in this space. Step 2 is to register with the Information Commissioner's Office, and really this is so you're compliant with your GDPR and your data protection, and regardless of really any business that you're running, you should be registered with the ICO anyway, and the cost of this will be around £40. Step number 3 is the insurance. Now before we get into the insurance, if you're thinking right now, oh man, there's just so many things I need to do before I can get compliant, then make sure you watch all the way to the end, because I have a little hack for you in terms of how it can make it easier for you. So when it comes to insurance, there are a number of different insurances that you can put into place, but there's a couple of key ones that you really need to have. The first one is professional indemnity insurance, and the second one is employee liability insurance. Now your professional indemnity insurance essentially protects you against bad advice or you being sued from a potential client in terms of what you're doing, in terms of the service you're offering and what you're doing for them. So it's absolutely necessary for you to have that in place. Then the second one, the employee liability one, is if you've got any type of employees. So for example, if you've set up a limited company and you are an employee of the company, you still have employees, i.e. yourself. So it's important that you've got the right insurances in place to be able to do that. Now these, generally speaking, what we tend to do within our business, we set these up as a business package, and what that means is we bundle them up with a number of different insurances, including maybe the office insurance as well, and we pay about £500. You can probably get a little bit less if you break it down, but generally speaking, that's what we're paying for that insurance. The other insurance that you'll need is the insurance on your client account that you'll have at the bank, and the insurance related to that. But before you can do that, you need to first have the account. So let's get into step number 4, which is a client account. Now, what is a client account and how is it different from any other type of bank account? When you set up your business, you'll need to open up a regular bank account to operate from, but you'll also have a client account. Now, what the client account does, it holds clients' money. So for example, if somebody's paid you a deposit, some monies that you're holding, someone's paying you reservation fees, these are other people's money. They're not your fees just now. And to hold that money, you need to be able to ring fence it and have it separately. So what the banks do, they will hold that money separately. So God forbid, if something ever happened to your business, it collapsed, it went into administration, that money is separate because it belongs to clients as opposed to the business. So nobody else can get their hands on it. Now, it doesn't mean that people can't dip into it and pinch money out of it, because that's unfortunately happened in the past as well. People do things like that. So the insurance then also needs to be put into place that we mentioned earlier to make sure that money is protected as well. And we pay in our business about £500 for the insurance for that account as well. Step number 5 is to join one of the redress schemes. So currently you have a choice of two. There's either the property ombudsman or the property redress scheme. They're both very similar, and essentially what they are, if your clients are unhappy and they want to make a complaint, they can go to these bodies to complain if they're not happy with the way they're being dealt with by you. And you have to be a member of one of these to be able to operate. If you get kicked out of one, it doesn't mean that you can automatically go and join the other one, because these people can put you out of business. So you need to make sure that you comply. But before you can join, you have to do some of these things in order. For example, you already need your client account, you need the client account protected with the insurance, you need to have your professional indemnity insurance in place. These things need to be in place before you can become a member, and before you can operate, you need to become a member. So it's about getting all these things right. So the order I'm giving you these things in is the order that I would do these things in to ensure that you can become compliant and ready to operate. And the fees will generally be about £200 to join, and each year as well. The 6th and final step is to register with HMRC for anti-money laundering. This is essentially to make sure that the money that you're involved with is all clean, it's not from a dubious background, and really to keep everybody protected and safe. And the fee for that, you'll probably pay about £300 to join, and then about £150 for each person that's involved. And so about £450 is what you'll pay to join. So when you look at that overall, so 6 key steps in terms of how much you'll have spent, you probably would have spent about between £1,500 to maybe £2,000 to be able to get set up and get operational as a compliant deal sourcer. Now, that's quite a bit to spend if you're just going to dip your toe into this. So it's really important that you make the decision. This is something you really want to do, because you don't want to spend a couple of £1,000s and just get all this right. And then of course you've got other things to do like websites and other bits and pieces to sort out as well. So it's not just going to be only this amount of money that you'll spend. You could spend a few £1,000s just to get operational. Now, the reality is you'll probably make that money back in 1 or maybe 2 deals. But the mistake I see so many people making is they spend so much time setting up all this business and the branding and the compliance, and then they don't do any deals. They don't actually find any deals and don't make any money and end up closing the business down, just losing money. So the key thing, remember here, is to ensure that you are comfortable and confident you can be able to find these deals that you're going to package and do through this business. Now, I said if you watch all the way to the end, I'm going to give you a little bit of a hack. But just before I give you that hack, what I'm also going to be doing is doing a much more deep dive version of this as a workshop. And if you're interested in learning more about that, make sure you ping me a message and we'll put you on the notification list as and when that workshop is going to run. So then you can get a much more deep version of this and how this works. Other costs to think about as well is also contracts that you'll need. You'll need contracts in terms of from your client, from how you work, terms of business. So there's various documentation that you need before you can really operate as well. So although we talked about the key compliance, there'll be other costs and things that you need to think about. Now, the cost of these documents can vary anything from a couple of £1,000s to several £1,000s, because really the solicitors are drafting these for you for your specific purpose in terms of what you're doing. And if you start doing things like option agreements as well, where you're controlling property to be able to maybe sell on to somebody else, then the cost can start increasing as well. And on this workshop that I tend to do, I'm going to give you all the details and all the paperwork as well that you need. So if you are looking to set up as a deal sourcer, then you've got all the paperwork from me ready to go as well. So make sure you ping me a message and let me know if you want to be notified as and when we do that particular course. So now the hack. What's the hack? Well, the hack is, if you just want to dip your toe in this and try and see if this is something you want to do, what I'd encourage you to do is go and work under somebody else's wings first of all, rather than setting up this whole business by yourself. And what that means is that way you can legally go out and find these deals and put them through this business to be able to sell them on, and that way you're compliant. But rather than having to make all this expenditure, you might just give them a cut out of each deal that you're doing. It might be, say, you're paying £500 or £1,000 or whatever it might be out of the first few deals that you're doing, just so you get going. And if you find, yes, I'm enjoying this, I want to do this, I want to do more of this, then you can go and set up your own business. But on the other hand, if you decide, well, you know what, this is just too much hard work and I give up, I don't necessarily want to do this. And as I said right from the beginning, this is hard work, but the rewards are big as well if you're persistent with this and you get good at this. And remember, I also mentioned earlier on, there's two key skills that you need to absolutely succeed in property, and that's the ability to be able to find these good deals, but also be able to find the money, i.e. the investors, to bring the two together to make the whole thing work. We've talked about how to set up a compliant deal sourcing business, but of course you need deals as well. And the best deals are the BMV deals. So if you haven't already, make sure you watch this video I've got lined up for you over here, where I talk about exactly what BMV deals are, how to structure them, and how to find some of those deals as well. But before you go and do that, make sure you click on my face here to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed, and then I'll see you on this video just over here.